Excuse me, everybody. I'm just going to borrow a minute of your time. Just wanted to say hello and thank you, Taylor. Thank you for attending today's Origin and Destination Training session. My name's Tom Glickert. I'm the president of ITSGA. Want to just go over a few ITSGA announcements, but before we do that, special thanks to Rick Ayers for coming down from the Center for Advanced Transportation Technology Lab, better known as the CATT Lab. We appreciate your commitment to helping us grow our knowledge base. Thank you to Peachtree Corners, Greg Ramsey in the back for hosting us today. And then special thanks to Metro Traffic, who is sponsoring this meeting. I'll give Chala a few minutes to speak here shortly, but first let me just give you a quick ITS Georgia update. Membership for ITS Georgia is open for the 2022 calendar year. Please head over to the join page on our website and keep an eye out for membership emails that will be coming over the next few months. If you have any questions or run into any issues, reach out to Stephen Sheffield, our membership chair. We have the next 2 months of meetings planned. February 23rd, we're going to be meeting in City Springs to get an update on the Georgia ports from the Senior Director of Engineering and Facilities Maintenance for the Georgia Ports Authority, Chris Novak. And in March, we'll be heading back to Peachtree Corners for a tour of the Curiosity Lab and an update on the V2X Live conference that will be occurring just before our arrival. Stay tuned for more information on these upcoming meetings. Sponsorship for these events is open, so please reach out to Matt Glasser or Natalie Schmozmengelcook if you are interested in sponsoring. November this year, Atlanta is going to be hosting the Southeastern ITS Summit, which will bring 5 ITS chapters together under one roof. It'll be a great opportunity to network with your peers from Georgia and the surrounding states, exchange knowledge, and demonstrate new and emerging technologies. The call for abstracts is out now with the submission deadline of February 28th, so don't miss out on this opportunity to present and be recognized for all that you and your team are doing to support ITS throughout the Southeast. Speaking of networking, our Networking and Social Committee, led by Holly Painter and Madison Dormini, has some great events planned for 2022. Keep an eye out for these invitations as they start rolling into your inbox. Finally, there are some upcoming STEM activities that ITS Georgia is helping others promote within the Metro Atlanta area. We'll be sending out an email soon with some additional emails, but if you have time, please think about volunteering for these events to help usher in the next generation of engineers. So now I'll pass it over to Chala. Chala, if you want to come up, and you got your presentation all ready to go. Mic for you too. Thank you. There's a mic.
Well. Thank you, Tom. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Chala Bonja with Metro Traffics, and just want to kind of, I know a lot of people in this room, and just so that kind of give for some people that don't know about Metro Traffics or have never heard of it, kind of want to go over what we do and the service we offer. And thanks again for ITS Georgia for providing us this opportunity, and for Georgia DOT and CATT Lab for providing this training for our members and professional community here. So Metro Traffics, we provide, in general, transportation of professional engineering services to improve efficiency and safety of transportation system network. And in all our services that we provide, the core approach we have is insights, which is the kind of things we're learning today, data analytics and traffic studies, and kind of understand the underlying conditions. And on top of that, apply the engineering principles through experience, as well as sound engineering judgment. And ultimately, we want to deliver solutions that are optimized and cost-effective for our clients. And this is directly from our website. I don't going to be preaching to the choirs to go into description of all these things, but traffic operations, traffic studies, and signal ITS inspections, that's all the main 3 core areas of services that we provide. And the service sectors, primarily our service ultimately, whether we do it through sub-consulting with consultants or contractors, is ultimately for local and state government agencies And we do provide, scalable services with public sector experience, and to serve as extension of staff, and with a passion of public service for our clients. And if you are, a contractor or consulting firm looking for a sub-consultant, that's a reliable partner which offers a specialty service, whether it's signal timing or traffic engineering, or even if you do provide those services, we can augment your staff to serve you and your clients. And we're pre-qualified with GDOT in the area class you see here, and also DVE certified. And as a testimony of our reliability with our partners, we've served, in the short time we've been around, 13 clients. And if we consider indirect clients, we have served about 28 of them, and 24 projects, small and big, and it doesn't matter. So, and you can see the number of projects we complete and the clients we serve. We have many repeat clients. And as we enter 2022, I almost say 2021, but can't believe it already here. So we're looking to grow our team. So if you know anyone that has, experience or is passionate about the areas of services that we do, feel free to let them, reach out to me. We're looking for, traffic operations and studies, as well as safety and design. And whether it's, experienced person, we were looking for, people that are passionate about mentoring teams, building, and knowledge sharing, as well as delivering solutions to clients. So that's in a nutshell. I hope I didn't run over my 5 minutes. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to me. Thank you again for ITS Georgia.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Matt Glasser. I am on the board of directors for ITS Georgia. I work at GDOT. And I just want to say thank you all for coming all the way out here. Very excited to have you guys here to do training for origin destination data. This has been a long time coming for the department. And really, this isn't just us. This is a partnership with the Atlanta Regional Commission. So want to give the kudos where it's due. What we have for you today is a multi-part training. This first part is going to be presentation. It's intended for you guys to be taking notes. So please put your computers away. I'm going to treat this like school. If you're in college, I'm going to be coming around, smacking your hands. Don't be texting your friends. Don't be passing notes. It's unacceptable behavior. If you need to, go ahead and throw your computer on the charger. There are plenty of plugs in the back. We have some extra power strips as necessary. But on that, so before Rick gets into this, part of the reason that we're very excited about this, and I've been getting my grief this morning about why do we choose INRIX and why are we working with the CATT Lab? Who are these guys? What's this all about? Well, this is about us working in part of a larger group of states up and down the eastern seaboard called the Eastern Transportation Coalition. And they put together a transportation data marketplace. And as part of that marketplace, one of the core tenets is data sharing back and forth through the states. And so while for me, as a member of GDOT, I only care about Georgia and I don't care about any of the other states, right? We're the best, we're the only state, we're an island, et cetera, et cetera. If you're a consultant and you work in, say, Massachusetts or you work in Tennessee, just by a few ways of example, they also have the same data set that we're going to be looking at today. And what's even better about it is it's the same analytics tools. And when we dive into it, you're going to see that their data sets, hopefully, are populated into your login credentials. And so it just makes it a whole lot more seamless for us as a community to be working back and forth and sharing ideas. So again, put your computers away unless you are recording me. I will smack your hands. And Rick, I'll hand it to you. Give you
Thank you very much, Matt. Well, good morning, everyone. I am super excited to be here. Matt, thank you for the invitation. As Matt implied or indicated directly, my name is Rick Ayers. I work for the Center for Advanced Transportation Technology Lab out of the University of Maryland. Who of you have heard of the Center for Advanced Transportation Technology Lab out of the University of Maryland, or the CATT Lab? Anybody heard of the CATT Lab? Okay, maybe about half of you. So maybe the other half, a quick primer on who we are. So the CATT Lab is basically a small software firm. There's about 90 full-time equivalent software engineers, database engineers, data scientists. We were founded back in back about 20 years ago with the sole purpose of developing transportation big data analytics, cloud-based solutions for states up and down the Eastern Transportation Corridor, or up and down the I-95 corridor. It was really an effort initially to bring together off of the island the states of Virginia, Maryland, and DC, because they all share boundaries and transportation challenges. We built this system to help pull in real-time data from their incident feeds, real-time data from their work zones, real-time CCTV feeds, real-time probe data. We're going to talk about probe data a little bit today, but all of that's being integrated in real time. But then what the CATT Lab does is we archive all of that rich minute-by-minute real-time data from authoritative sources like the DOTs all up and down the Eastern corridor, as well as other states across the US, and we archive it. Why do we archive it? Well, we archive it because there's planners and operations analysts like yourselves that want to go back in time and ask questions about, well, what happened during this event? And you know, what might the scenario look like if we were to close this roadway for a road widening project? Or what did the trends of the network traffic look like as a result of this ice storm? Scenarios like that, basically answering performance measure questions about the roads across, in this case, the state of Georgia. We're going to kind of broaden that scope today and really focus on origin, destination, trip and travel pattern data. So we've collaborated with a number of companies, data source companies, to bring to bear some really cool technology that I'm going to share with you today. It's called Trip Analytics. All of you should technically have access to Trip Analytics. If you don't, we'll walk through that when we get into the exercises. So today is going to be comprised of me yammering away for a little bit in the morning to kind of give you some context and understanding of what this trip and travel pattern cloud-based solution is. Talk about the data a little bit. You'll see some scenarios, some video demos as part of this presentation set. I want to take a quick break after I get through my slide deck so that you guys can fire up your laptops. You can check your email because I sent all of you a PDF of today's exercises. How many of you have already downloaded that? Yeah, so give you a chance to download the exercises. I will demo the software for a little bit, kind of walk you through a couple of different scenarios, and then we're going to work through the exercises together. Going to be totally honest with you, you are my guinea pigs. I've never delivered this course. I've certainly talked about Trip Analytics, the technology and the data that we're going to be working through today, but this, thanks to Matt's leadership and efforts, this is the first class being delivered that really exercises the opportunity to think about the impact that origin and destination data may have on planning and operations within the state of Georgia. So that's the plan for the day in terms of the agenda. How long we'll take, I don't know. We've got 2.5 hours, 3 together. I don't know if we'll go to all 3, but we may. I think the exercises are going to take longer than I imagine because I know how to do them. So this is a screen grab of the RITIS tools catalog. So if you navigate, we've got a landing page that takes you to this tools catalog, and you click every single one of these icons, and it brings up, some insights about specific tool that's part of this broader RITIS platform that you guys all have access to. So RITIS is this platform of tools, technology, and data that provides you the ability to again, reach back in time and perform some analysis against probe data. A lot of tools here. We're not going to cover all of this stuff. We're really only going to focus on these 3 tools and the lower portion of this tool catalog. These 3 tools are currently part of a collection of apps that belongs to a broader suite of tools that we call Trip Analytics. We're going to cover 3 tools today. I'm going to caveat this really quickly. We're going to cover 3 tools today. We're going to cover the OD matrix tool, the segment or link analysis tool, as well as the route analysis tool. Your exercises, your work within Trip Analytics is going to be focused on working with these tools as they exist today. Because of the beauty of the Eastern Transportation Coalition and everyone working together, we're like any other software firm. We're continually evolving the technology, releasing, we launch new releases every quarter. There's updates, there's patches, there's bug fixes. You're going to be working with version 3.0, today. We are about to release this quarter of 2022, version 4.0. That being said, I think the work that you'll be doing will give you greater insights to the nature of how you set up a query within Trip Analytics. And it'll support your work in version 4.0 pretty seamlessly in terms of setting that query up. But before we dive into these tools, let's talk about the data. All right, so while the CATT Lab builds these pretty cool cloud-based web solutions, there's data that drives your ability to query and answer questions about your network, right? Who knows a little bit about trajectory data? Anybody heard of trajectory data? Probe data? Probe data? A couple of you? Okay. So trajectory data is like probe data. A probe is a connected vehicle, or maybe, you've got your phone, your mobile device, your smartphone, with every time you download an app, what's one of the questions that you have to answer in order to approve using that app? Oh, do you accept location-based services to be used as part of this app? So every time you're installing an app, you're also agreeing with that app provider that while your GPS is on, they're collecting your coordinate data. Now, all of that's anonymized, okay? So let's disperse that notion that the government knows where I am. No, that's not, that's not what that's about. The app providers are collecting coordinate data, and that's it. It's, whatever that frequency that they're collecting data, we're pulling that in. Connected vehicles are also collecting insights about location. Every car that rolls out of a manufacturing facility today has a GPS device on board. You may not have the cool onboard navigation system embedded in the vehicle that you're driving, but guess what? It knows where that vehicle is. The OEM providers, the Hondas of the world, the GMs of the world, the Fords of the world, they take that data and then they sell it to third parties. Now let's try to separate how that might look from a consumer perspective that you might be familiar with relative to how we use connected vehicle data today. From a consumer perspective, how many of you know what Google Maps is? Oh yeah, everyone. You turn on Google Maps, and you turn on the traffic layer, you're going to get those color-coded sort of representations of traffic speeds. That's Google's probe data. That's probe data on Google Maps, but it's theirs because everybody on the planet is using Google Maps or some Google product on their device. I don't care if you're an iPhone user or you're an Android user, you're using a Google product, and they're collecting coordinate data. But here's the deal. Google's not going to sell their probe data to anybody else because that's their IP. That's their intellectual property. So other providers, third-party providers, like our partner INRIX, they will go out to hundreds of other sources, the GMs, the Fords, the Hondas, the so forth, and LBS, location-based services app providers, and say, hey, gimme all of your location data, because we see that there's value in it. And obviously for a transportation agency like Georgia DOT, it's proven quite effective in helping with understanding the performance of the network without deploying hardware devices. All this stuff is coming, through the cloud minute by minute for probe data. But for this data, let's roll back. That's a quick primer on probe data. For this data, the origin destination trajectory data, check out that little tagline or subtitle to the title of the slide. The underlying data that you're going to be working with today and in the future within trip analytics, this trajectory data is massive. We're talking 100 million plus trips per day. Try to put that into perspective. Across the country, INRIX is collecting 100 million trips per day. That corresponds to roughly 3 billion vehicle miles traveled every day. Now, I don't have a map of what that looks like from state to state, but if you take that many trips and that many vehicle miles traveled, guess what? That is statistically significant. There's no amount of freaking hardware deployment devices that you can put out there on your network that can capture that kind of penetration. It would be an overwhelming cost burden to the state. So the data, this trajectory data that we're working with, is pretty substantial. And again, I've kind of covered this already. Where's the data coming from? Where's the trajectory insights coming from? It's coming from all of those different OEM sources, mobile apps, freight companies. They all have their own logistics software that they use. So, that's all getting pulled in as part of this as well. Probably not as obvious on the slide, but at the far right, you see in the yellow parentheses, of consequence, of significance, and why this trajectory data works for what we're going to explore today is because of the fidelity and frequency. 1 to 5 second frequency. Imagine getting a ping of where a vehicle is, whether it's a passenger vehicle, a box truck, or a freight truck, getting a ping every 1 to 5 seconds. Boop, 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 boop. Imagine driving down the road. Of course you're going to gain insights as to where a vehicle is. I mean, that's ridiculous frequency for tracking an individual vehicle. So some attributes or characteristics that INRIX, our friends from INRIX, are capturing for all of this trajectory data. We've got to know the device IDs. Every device, every car, every smartphone, every logistics package on a delivery truck has to have a unique ID. That's how we're able to track its path through a network. So you got location, heading, speed. So there's some interesting characteristics that we could pull out of this trajectory data as a result of all of this being captured. Keep in mind that all of the data, all of the analytics that we're going to explore today, all of that can be downloaded. So while we at the CATT Lab, we pride ourselves in building out really cool, rich data visualizations that let you tap into this gigantic big data transportation data source. A lot of folks, a lot of analysts in particular, consultants, they like to do their own analysis. So you can export this stuff, right? So export any of the analysis so you can explore it in more detail. So here's a graphic that essentially illustrates one trip of the 100 million trips that's being captured every day and recorded by INRIX. So in the leftmost map, is my cursor? Yeah, my cursor is showing up there. So this is the origin, this is the destination on the right, and this is the full path. But here's the start of a trip. Kind of looks like this individual's coming out of their neighborhood. Notice how the green pings, those are just coordinate locations. Those are just XY coordinates of the ping from the GPS unit, from that car. They're really tight together, right? If they're tight together, that means they're going slow. But then when they bunch up, you'll see as those coordinate values bunch up, that means they're slowing down even more. And then you can capture their turns and where they're headed to. And then they get on this interstate. This is Salt Lake City. They get on an interstate, and those pings separate because they're going faster on the interstate. Now all of a sudden they get off the interstate in this rightmost inset, kind of slow down, you see them bunch up. Oh, they actually get, looks like they got to a signal here, maybe stop. Then they turned left and then right. Then they ended up at a Home Depot because they're doing some home improvement projects. So it's kind of interesting, and I don't know where Georgia will be going with this, but the same underlying trajectory data that we're getting anywhere from 1 to 3 second, 1 to 5 second pings on, what else do you think you might gain insights from that kind of data? What did you see with the bunching of the coordinates? Not only did you see where they started and where they ended up, well, their speed, but then at certain intersections, they bunched up and then they turned, or they bunched up and paused. You know, if you're recording time, provides insights to signalize intersection movements. So we've got a whole nother product that we collaborate with INRIX on. It's called Signal Analytics. We won't talk about it today, but this same trajectory data can provide insights to what's going on from a turning movement perspective down to the intersection level. Crazy voodoo magic. I mean, I don't know how that stuff works other than I get it, but it's, you know, again, no hardware deployment, and you can pick up this sort of data and insights. Very, very cool. So I'm going to pause for a minute and make sure everybody's getting it with regard to the underlying data. You know, none of this is going to make sense, or it's not going to be understandable unless you've processed the data that we're using for this analytics, this trip analytics product. Also, ask questions along the way. Like, Rick, I got a question. Oh, that doesn't make sense. Yes, sir. So the resolution, yeah, the resolution of each GPS ping varies from device to device. So a car's GPS is going to be much finer resolution than that of a consumer grade GPS chip on a smartphone. But what's cool, and this is a good question, I wish I had a whiteboard. What's cool is our friends at INRIX, they do all of the snapping of the pings to the roadway network. So if that, you know, even around here, it's pretty hilly in and around Atlanta. Your GPS may be off by, you know, 5 meters or 20 meters. But if you're getting a ping every 3 seconds, let's say, and that path goes off the street center line, but then back onto the street center line, they have back-end business logic and algorithms that knows to bring those pings and snap them back to the street center line in the direction that it's headed. The device, yep. So if you didn't hear the question, the probe data or the trajectory data, is it capable of picking up lane-specific insights and or insights about where that vehicle might be, an emergency lane or whatever? Today, the answer is no. That gets blown out at intersections because intersections and turning movements are essentially mapped out, and you know that insight because the probe's going straight, it's turning right or it's turning left. There is work being done, however, to pull out lane-specific insights from this level of trajectory data. So it's in the works. It's not quite there yet, but yeah, it's a good question. So the trajectory data and the insights that you could pull with trip analytics is directional only, not lane specific. So that's kind of the follow-up kind of point of information, is that we know which direction, of course, a trip or GPS ping is going, but we don't know which lane they're traveling in as part of that. All right, so this is kind of a cool graphic. Your trip data, your origin destination data that has been purchased by Georgia DOT and who's? ARC. And by the ARC, provides origin destination trips for a pretty broad area. You see your state in dark green, but you see that polygon that extends beyond the state of Georgia? That represents every single possible origin or destination geography that the underlying data is that's included with the underlying data for, okay, you ready for this? You might want to write this down. You only have essentially 10 months of data. You have February, August, and October of 2019. You have February, August, and October of 2020. You have the same months for 2021 plus December. So for 2021, you have 4 months of data: February, August, October, and December. December was just uploaded a couple of days ago, so these exercises that you're working on, I was like frantic trying to pull example scenarios out of and do the analysis for. Yes, Matt?
So you guys know, December 2021 is moving forward, will be logged going forward, so January will populate.
Oh, good point.
February will populate, March will populate as those months are selected, as they're uploaded. The reason that those months were selected
That's backfill. Yeah.
was to backfill, so that way for the folks that work in the Office of Planning, those months were specifically chosen as quote-unquote normal months,
Yeah.
that they could go back and do their freight plans, do their study plans based off that. So that's why they were chosen. They were intended to be representative, and there's from what I understand from them, there are factors that you can use for scaling up and down. So,
Yeah, thank you for that point of information. So yes, right now, those are the only months that you have that you can analyze against, but moving forward for 2022, you'll have every single month. And that gets refreshed, I want to say weekly. You'll be getting, no, it's going to be monthly. It's only monthly time, snapshots in time. But I guess the point of sharing this slide with you, you'll see this is exposed to you as well in the application itself. But while we're interested in the state of Georgia, the trips that cross through your state come and go all over the country. I mean, even beyond the Mississippi River, right? I mean, you've got trips for just those 10 months of the past few years that started or ended up way out in western Texas. Yes, sir.
Why were only a few months of kind of foundational history? Why did they have to be selected instead of
Backfill.
I think
Yeah, planners use this notion of normalized movement through the state as kind of a baseline. So you've got where you've got irregular traffic are, during the holiday seasons, summertime, you're going to have irregular traffic because people are moving to and from their vacation destinations. So you, as a planner, not that all of you are planners, but as a planner, you want to try to avoid analysis, particularly OD analysis, around those highly congested or out of the ordinary travel months.
I may have asked that right. If there's going to be data existing for every month moving forward,
Yep.
why would you want data every month moving forward as opposed to having data for every month moving backwards?
Yeah, that's all I answer that. Budget. So we had to typically you write your licenses when you're setting up your agreements is like, I'm starting in July 1st, fiscal year, I want it to run throughout the year, right? And so these data sets are like roughly 1 million to 1.2 million every year. So since this is our first year, it was more important for us to get a good foundational platform that was accessible for planners. We'll certainly look at the opportunity for going back and backfill on additional months, but at the time it was more important for us to just kind of get it off the ground, get ourselves that foundation for what was needed for the planning purposes. There are a lot of freight, as I mentioned, they do regular freight studies, both ARC and the Office of Planning and GDOT.
But it will be a paying subscription for
Yeah, so so our license is for the next 18 months, and then once that ends, we'll re-up it and keep going. So basically, 2022 moving forward, it'll be full years forever. Yeah.
Sorry, I misunderstood. Thank you, Matt.
This is for the data and the time. This is just for the trip analytics.
Yep.
The other speed stuff that folks have been accessing still have to access.
Oh yeah, you've got daily, minute by minute that goes back, yeah, to 4 or 5 years now. So good question. So if you're a probe data analytics user, the probe data that's consumed, that underlying speed data down to every segment of the roadway in Georgia, that's been, you've got minute by minute every single day, and that's been archived way back to 2017 for you. So yeah, great point of clarification. So does this make sense, that notion of trips go beyond the state border? That's what I want to try to kind of communicate by sharing with you, that the scope, the geographic scope of the data that is exposed to you at the currently. All right, so at this time, I'm going to run through some of these tools again. What you're going to see, what you're going to use today is all current release, version 3.0. While we've organized the analysis and your results around these 3 traditional sort of perspectives at looking at origin destination data, the next release will be super cool in terms of spatially selecting and setting up your query before you get your analysis. So again, there's 3 primary tools within trip analytics: the standardized OD matrix, which is just kind of a gridded perspective of trips between a set of geographies and another set of geographies. Segment or link analysis. A link analysis is, hey, identify a roadway corridor, and I want to, in a particular direction, and I want to know where trips came from and where trips went to through that corridor. Kind of cool, okay? And then route analysis right now in the current release, you want to say, hey, I'm starting in Peachtree City. What routes were taken to get to the city of Atlanta on any given month of this last year? That's a good question. The question was, when are trips terminated? I probably should have noted that. A trip is terminated when when the vehicle has stopped for more than 10 minutes. So if they pull over and it's less than 10 minutes and they get back on the road for their trip, and there's some other variables like speed, but generally speaking, a trip ends in under 10 minutes. Or a trip ends if the vehicle trajectory has stopped for more than 10 minutes. Okay? Great question.
With that being said, a follow-up to that, is there a way to chain? If that makes any sense, you know what I'm saying? Kind of see where you stop for 10 minutes and pick up and keep going to another.
We're working with NRIX to provide, like the scenario for chaining trips is generally for long haul analysis. And there are certainly sources of data out there for long haul analysis. Right now, this particular tool, we provide for some of that. On the freight side, you'll notice that there's different vehicle types that you could filter by. And the freight vehicles, we've accommodated for some of that, but not all of it. And you'll see how you can pull some of that out as part of some of these demos. So I'm just going to do some, within the framework of a PowerPoint, you're going to see some animated demos. They're going to it's going to be a flood of a visual example of how these tools work. I'll go through demos later, but just to get you a sense for what you're going to have an opportunity to play with is here. So the OD matrix tool, again, way to kind of take standardized geographies, whether it's counties, sub-counties, transportation analysis zones, or zip codes, compare and contrast trips at different times and dates, bind between those standardized geographies. You can filter that down by vehicle type, again, different times and days. Today, we've got this kind of cool OD chord diagram that's in there. It's a nice visualization, but not sure we're going to keep that around long. Also integrated with an OD matrix is, because every OD matrix is bound by a geography, you have the ability to look at sort of those geographies and kind of filter out, where were trips beginning and where are trips ending with respect to your analysis in the zone map. These zones or geographies are the defined geographies that you use when setting up that OD matrix. So OD matrix is where you're going to see zone maps. It's just a standardized kind of thematic legend that is generated with that chord diagram. Nothing of significance other than this is how we're going to color that chord diagram. So that's OD matrix. Pretty standard. You set up the origin geographies, you select the destination geographies, and it generates a matrix. The geographies that you're generally going to use in the OD matrix and the segment analysis tools are predefined. You've got 4 different types of predefined geographies. You've got counties, sub-counties, which is like the city of Peachtree and its bounding borders, transportation analysis zones, and then census tracts, right? Yeah. So those are the 4 standardized geographies that you have access to for both of those tools. Now what's cool, and I'll touch on this in the route analysis tool, we will not get into the functionality, but in the route analysis tool, we provide standardized geographies for you to run your analysis against, but you can also upload your own custom geography as a GeoJSON file, which is pretty sweet. But let's get back to the demos. This is the link or segment analysis tool. Again, this is designed to provide insights to, let's select a corridor in a particular direction. This is I-75, I-85 that runs through the center of Atlanta, just looking at specific days and specific month of the year 2021. And the analysis comes back and pretty crazy. Shows you in orange all the origin geographies, all the origin counties, and in blue, the destination counties of trips that traveled just through that one corridor within downtown Atlanta. Also, what you see here is, after the analysis is run, you also see a zone map, OD matrix. You can label all the polygons, as you see here. You can interact with the map. Down in the lower left, you'll see that we're going to click the view matrix. You can filter that matrix to just look at a subset of counties. And then you can export your results. So the link segment analysis, again, is all about, hey, I want to understand the flow and movement. Where did trips go and originate from? Or where did trips originate from and where did they go if they pass through this segment of road or through these segments of roads? And you could build out your query or that spatial input through the interface. All right, so that was trip segment analysis, segment link analysis. This last one is probably the coolest, I think, and the one that's used the most. There's a lot more being added to the next release of the product with regard to doing route analysis. But here again, route analysis is designed to say, hey, Rick, this is my starting sets of geographies, and I want to know what roads were taken to get to these destination geographies. So I'm going to start here. That could be a predefined geography, and I want to end up over here, another predefined geography. Or you can upload custom geographies and do make that the origin and upload a custom geography and make that a destination. Either way, it's going to tell you for the temporal parameters that you set forth, all of the roads that were taken and how many trips on that particular road there were. Travel times, average travel time, the maximum travel time, the minimum travel time, the reliability for each route. I mean, it's crazy, right? It's not, you're getting the results. You will get every single route that was taken from the origin geographies to the destination geographies for the temporal period that you asked. I mean, it's some of these use cases, you could get 1,000 roads or 1,000 different routes that were taken. Now, keep in mind, we're working with a sample set of data. This isn't a full count. You guys familiar with the Census Bureau? You know what the decennial census is, right? It's conducted every 10 years. The decennial census is a full count. Every single man, woman, and child in the United States. That's full count. Every few years, the Census Bureau conducts what's called the American Community Survey. That's a sample count. This is a sample count of trips that move through your state. Do not think for a moment that this is a full count of every trip. This is your version of the American Community Survey. Does that make sense, that analogy? okay? So it's just sample counts. But what did I mention earlier? 100 million trips every day that are being collected across the US, 3 billion vehicle miles traveled as part of those trips. It's statistically significant and represents, in a good measure, the trips that are moving throughout the state. Somebody had a question. Yes, sir.
As we think about all this data, performance measures are becoming more and more important to our employers through us. So I'm wondering, for a city, can we use this data to measure vehicle miles traveled?
Vehicle miles traveled with trip analytics, is that a measure that can be derived? You can derive a sample measure of vehicle miles traveled, but not a full count of vehicle miles traveled, because you are collecting the number of trips that pass through, and you'll see some analysis here in a minute. You have, with the route analysis, you know how many trips pass through that route between, point A and point B, or origin geographies A and origin geographies B. You know how many vehicles traveled that route, or how many trips, not how many trips were taken through that route. You know how long that route is because it's in the database. So you can derive a sample representation of vehicle miles traveled through this. Does that make sense? Yeah. And you'll see that in the exercise, because I have you guys kind of dive into like pulling out some of the metrics from the analysis to generate a report or answer some questions. And some of the metrics, particularly that come out of the route analysis tool, are miles of the corridor, the number of trips on that corridor, the average speed, the minimum travel time, the average travel time, maximum travel time, and reliability. So there's a number of performance measures that you get for that corridor as part of the analysis. And then you could pull out of it and derive your own analysis from there.
How small of a segment can you analyze? Like, you're trying to see traffic pattern changes, and make it change at a specific intersection from like one side of town to the other. Can you do it that small, or
yeah,
city to city?
Yeah, from a granularity perspective, if any of you are familiar with probe data analytics, you know that the underlying data, that the trajectories are being sort of snapped to, this notion of snapping pings to roadway segments. I mean, the underlying base map, they could be block. The granularity could be the size of a block, or it could be like a mile. Like generally, the closer into an urban area you are, the segments are going to be smaller. The further away from an urban area that you get, the segments, it's called a TMC, the TMC segment's going to get longer. So all of that trajectory GPS pinging is getting pinged to a base map of road segments. And they can be small segments or they can be long segments. It kind of varies. But when you set up your query, you could certainly be as granular as the underlying data allows you. That's kind of the condition, if you will.
Is it based off the TMC map or the high-res map?
TMC map, yeah. So good question. All right, let's take a quick look at a demo of the route analysis tool. Here we're setting up an example for Georgia. I generated all of these just for you, Matt, these little animated demos. So we're looking at Savannah. What were the routes, I guess, between county and Savannah to the counties that surround Atlanta during the 3 months of 2021. I looked at all vehicle types. And no surprise, there's not a whole lot of routes, but if you dig in, there's actually probably several dozen routes that are identified in that table list up above that just captured one vehicle or just captured one trip. So it's pretty interesting, right? In that it's not giving you just, the top 3 routes or the top 10 routes. You set up what you want to, where you want to go from and to, and what the temporal parameters are, and it's going to list every stinking route taken between those 2 geographies for that time period analyzed. Let me see if I can pause this for a minute, and then you can see. I don't know if I can zoom in here. Oh, I can. See some of the, getting back to your question about performance measures. So the route analysis tool gives you some really nice performance measures and metrics for every single route. There's lots of different routes that can go from Savannah to Atlanta. They're going to give you the total number of trips. They're going to give you the total number of the different vehicle classes that went from point A to point B. It's going to give you the length of that route, its travel time, its average travel time, min, max, and the reliability. So there's some cool performance measures that are in there that you can pull out and work with for further analysis. So the source providers that INRIX works with are varied in nature. Again, they're the OEMs of the world, like the GMs and the Fords. Those are the passenger vehicles. The smartphone sources are generally going to be within a passenger vehicle. But INRIX has dozens of partners that are freight truck carriers, and they have their own logistics software that's embedded on the truck that captures where they're going and coming from. So that's freight trucks. And then, of course, on the delivery side, the Amazons, the FedExes, UPSs of the world, they all have their own devices on board or handheld. Some of the moving companies, those box truck, medium weight vehicles, that characterizes those types of vehicles. Again, they've got their own logistics software on board. Because on the back end, the processing, they remove that noise. So they know, if they see duplicates from an origin destination perspective that has the same timestamps, oh, that's a duplicate. So it's deduped. Yes, sir.
For the origin and destination, is there a curtain capability or maybe a feature capability of looking at hash through rather than having to know the exact place the trip started?
Great segue. So I think I got, that was the last of the quick animated demos, video demos, very quick demos of those 3 tools. As I've mentioned a couple of times, the CATT Lab's constantly working to innovate and deliver new functionality and capability across our entire suite of tools. Trip analytics is no exception. I mean, we've got a product manager, a guy's named Greg Jordan, who's got phenomenal insight on this type of data and this sort of analysis because he did it professionally, owned his own company that kind of monitored trip data from helicopters. And they counted vehicles moving from point A to point B from a helicopter. So like old school method for determining trip paths and volumes. But Greg is our product manager for this. We've got some really cool capabilities coming out, and I'll point to those in just a little bit. One of the things I want to emphasize that I know that's some of you are in the ITS community and are familiar with other third-party data sources other than INRIX. We at the CATT Lab pride ourselves in being data agnostic. So we have architected trip analytics to be data agnostic as well. So while we're using INRIX trajectory data right now, and you'll be using that in your exercises, we recently integrated other data sources like the National Household Travel Survey into trip analytics. So that's a national county-based trip and travel pattern sample survey. Very, very cool data set. You'll walk through an exercise with that. But we're also looking to work with other data sources like GeoTab and Wejo. So if you're in the ITS community, you've engaged with other third-party data providers, keep in mind that we're architecting and continuing to sort of evolve this web-based solution to support a number of different products. In fact, Matt and I had a meeting yesterday to discuss this concept for freight movement through the state. You've got a third-party provider that you're gaining safety-related insights or providing safety-related insights to freight trucks that move through the state of Georgia. We'd like to look at and evaluate how that might contribute as a source to trip data through the state. So we want to be open to that, and we'll continue to evolve and architect the platform to support that. So in the lower right-hand corner here, just to kind of give you a sense for what the National Household Travel Survey gives you it's a whole bunch of additional sort of modes of transportation, which is kind of cool. You get rail, you get air, in addition to passenger vehicle. You also get access to filtering by trip distance. We'll take a look at all of this here in a minute. I think I actually may have done I did do a demo. So this is the National Household Transportation Survey and an example of that. So it's just another data source within trip analytics. Here I'm looking at trips between Georgia and Florida. So it's kind of like an OD matrix, but you've got various different modes of transportation, trip distance and time. And you could, the results is pretty interesting. You can look at specific freight or air or passenger vehicle movement out of the state, into the state, and where those trips went. And that's all from the National Household Transportation or National Household Travel Survey. Again, all of the data analysis that you work with can be downloaded for further analysis and exploration. Who's familiar with GIS tools here in the room? See if okay, so a good number of you. I want to extend this note to you. If you get back to your desk after our class and download the data, I'm going to be totally frank and upfront with you and transparent that the downloaded CSV files, while they all have geographic columns, descriptive columns in it, it's just that. It's names, and it's not FIPS codes. So if you've done any GIS work and you'd like to join like some tabular information to your geographic file, it's not easy right now. You got to monkey around with the tables a whole bunch. We are working to streamline that such that every single export out of Trip Analytics, if it's got, all of them have origin and destination geographies associated with them, we plan to associate the standardized FIPS code for said geography as a column. So that when you open your GIS product, your Esri user, whether it's ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Pro, it's an easy join of the table to the spatial data. Does that make sense? penetration is variable. INRIX has they have an update that they provide on a monthly basis that kind of captures of the 100 million trips per day that they're collecting from the rich set of partners, data sources that they have. Again, it's statistically significant, but it varies anywhere from, some states it could be 4%, in other states it's like 10%. But that number is moving because they're pulling in new data partners, data source partners all the time. And then others drop off, and then the data source partners range from freight truck data sources to passenger vehicle. And so it's variable. But the thing to keep in mind is it's significant. For passenger vehicle cars, the connected vehicle, it's onboard GPS. Is that what the number is?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, 5% of their entire national.
Holy smokes. I did not know that. That's impressive. All right, so in addition to this INRIX trajectory data, you have the National Household Travel Survey that you could play with as well and explore. We're gonna go through that in our exercises. So I'm now to your question, sir. And that is, in version 4.0, we are working diligently to incorporate all of these spatial sort of filters and conditions as part of the upfront query. And so just about every scenario that you can imagine, I want to know what's coming into my boundary. I want to know what's going out of my boundary. I want to know what's passing through it. I want to know what's only moving within my boundary, and or any combination of the four, right? All sorts of crazy sort of combinations of spatial filters are being released. Again, this next release, 4.0, later Q1 of this year. So we're in Q1. Honestly, I was hoping that it would be released by this class so that I can teach you about some of this stuff, but it's not. So the plan is kind of to follow up to that. And Matt, you and I haven't talked about this. My thought is we could do like a webinar to go over. I can get Greg on a Zoom meeting, and all of you, all the participants from this morning and this afternoon, Greg can go over some of the new tools, spatial filtering capabilities, to give you kind of a refresher, an update on what's been released. But that's coming soon. And then also in this list on the right side, trip filters, we're already accommodating for a few of these with the National Household Travel Survey. But note that a couple of them that are bold, we are looking for bike and pedestrian data sources. So I don't, if you guys know of or have in-house bike and pedestrian trip or trajectory data, we are happy to bring that into Trip Analytics to leverage it. We don't deal with the data. We're just the app provider. Yeah. Right, but how readily available is it in a format? Yeah, so if you get a source for an entire month of Strava data that represents all bike trips, let's have a conversation about that. We want to analyze that bike data from Strava for this month and make that an exploratory activity. Yeah, it's getting the back end data that, do they have an API? Do they archive the data? They probably don't archive the data. They probably just provided a real-time API. So then if you got the real-time API, then you have to build what INRIX than we do, which is an archiving mechanism for every single ping and every single trip. So it can get complicated depending upon their architecture and how they implement the tracking of runners, bikers, and hikers, you know? Yeah.
This is kind of building off of our vehicle type question, but yeah, as a cyclist, I oftentimes load Google Maps on my handlebars when I'm riding on the street network.
Mm-hmm.
Am I being picked up as a passenger vehicle though, or being assumed that I'm a car?
If you got Google Maps on this product and INRIX is not picking it up, remember my little statement earlier about Google Maps? Google is only concerned about Google.
Sorry, I don't use that particular app. I just meant
Okay.
I don't.
I mean, her example, I mean, it's Strava. If you're running Strava, it's picking up your coordinates. Now, what's the frequency? All depends on the settings. And the frequency, the ping rate, is what makes this product valuable. It's that 3-second ping rate. Within, you know, like walking, or biking, running, bicycling apps like Strava, you can modify some of those variables so that it doesn't burn your battery. So it's that data that might be being captured by that app is only valuable if it has a ping rate of 3 seconds. And that's why INRIX is in the business that they're in, because when they go out to all of these app providers and all of these OEMs, they know what they need to help solve problems like origin destination analysis. They need high frequency ping rates with device IDs, with bearings, with speeds, so that they can get that trip.
Follow up on that. There's a comment about streetlights. They're kind of doing it for their data. Everyone's kind of shaky about it. I think GDOT tried to do it. And so the industry is interested in it on our side, right? And they want to sell it to us. Where they struggle is, so what Rick was mentioning when they go, oh, we're going to snap it to this road. The pedestrian, right? Like, you could be walking through the mall, like, and then your GPS goes all crazy, and then, maybe you're running across the road, jaywalking. It's like, right now, those companies don't know how to deal with it, so what they can do is just, like, cloud on the road, and you kind of see like, red and yellow and green. We did data mine it, we're like, maybe in a couple of years.
Yeah, as you were talking, I'm wondering, like, well, any record might just get tossed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what?
But it's a mess.
Yeah, so like what INRIX will do right now, right? Like if for example, I think like they might use Facebook as one of their inputs, right? If you're walking, if they're trying to sell us vehicle speed data, they're gonna go walker
Go out.
and throw it out. Same way with
Gets
the biker,
removed.
a lot of times.
Yeah, they are. I mean, so to that point, INRIX does have content from their app providers that is recognized as like transit travelers or bikers and sometimes pedestrians. But their back-end algorithm, this kind of it's similar in nature to the question this gentleman asked earlier about duplication of trips. Maybe they have the app running that's separate from their data log. Absolutely, that could happen. But there's back-end business logic that removes that stuff so that it's focused on just this purpose or use case. And I would add to Matt's point is that those back-end, that back-end business logic and algorithms are getting more intelligent in terms of being able to pull out pedestrians and bikes in particular. And we're getting close. Bottom line is we're architecting the system to support those data sources, which will be good for you down the road. Yes, sir.
I think this brings up like a good question about like who along the food chain cleans up the data. It sounds like INRIX is one. Is that fair to say? Like, do they tell you that they make some guarantees about whether these are vehicles, these are freight, this is pet, this is bike, if there is one in charge of the cleaning of the data?
They're the data source provider. Yeah, we don't, I mean, we'll do some of our own data validation as we ingest the backfill and ingest the monthly for you guys, at least for trajectory data, as well as for probe data. But generally speaking, the data source providers responsible for data integrity and validation, QA, QC.
To follow that up, I mean, yeah, it's kind of a black box, but at the same time, you know, Georgia, along with everyone else up and down the Eastern Seaboard, pulls their resources to do
Data validation.
Data validation, QA, QC on a monthly basis, and those are all public reports. Basically say you're within the bounds or you're not. So everyone for the last 5, 6 plus years have been within the bounds. You know, so that does happen regularly, but that's why the overall partnership is really important for us. That's outside of the efforts that we kind of do on the Eastern Seaboard, like no one else does it.
It's actually kind of cool that the Eastern Transportation Coalition does that. You know, they independently through this marketplace, there's probe data providers, there's trajectory data providers, whatever. They go through a data validation process through independent studies to ensure that all of the providers are meeting minimum set of requirements. So it's nice. Just gonna run, oh, question, yes. So to support that, we've already provided the ability for you to define your own geography. So if you've got in the future release, you define the geography. If you want to do that outside of the standard geographies, if you want a custom geography and that custom geography is a block, then you can use that custom geography. You just need to figure out through ArcGIS Pro, you got to filter out just that one or multiple polygons, and then there's an option to export to. There's a toolbox to create GeoJSON, and then you use. That's in the next release. But today you can the route analysis supports custom geographies to upload, and those are still GeoJSON files. All right, it is 10:15. We've been going a while. You've been listening to me. Just a couple more slides to give you some example use cases. This solution as a service, as they call it, as we refer to it in the IT community, trip analytics. What is solution as a service? Anybody know? It's cloud-based, right? It's not, nothing gets installed on your desktop. Nothing gets installed on Georgia DOT servers. Everything's cloud-based, and that's called solution as a service. It's not software, it's a solution that answers specific questions about travel patterns in your state. So this solution as a service has been around for over a year now. There are several states that have already implemented trip analytics. So I'm going to give you a couple of use cases for how the solution has been used up heretofore. Rhode Island, a lot of these use cases are freight-based because it does provide some really cool insights to freight movement. Rhode Island DOT, I want to say it was about 18 months ago, they started out with some analysis of truck origin and destination for a specific road near the Port of Providence. And after they started that focused study, they realized, hey, you know what? We really need to look at the entire state, to look at trends not only in and around the port, but maybe at a more macro level, what's happening not only throughout the state, but through our state. And it was really interesting. This map on the left shows origin truck trips, and the map on the right shows destination truck trips. This is a map that they developed using ArcGIS desktop, but the underlying data came from trip analytics. So again, they took the output information product from trip analytics and generated these these heat maps. So it did provide some basic understanding to the movement of freight trucks, where they're coming from and where they're going to in the state. But one thing that they discovered that they did not know about is that one of these clusters, I think on the origin side, I think the one in the center there on the origin map, they were not aware of. You know, what's all this truck freight movement coming out of this area? And so after they kind of investigated it a little bit further, it turns out that it was a CVS distribution warehouse. It just wasn't on their radar. But it's a big warehouse, and there's a lot of freight truck moving out of this distribution center. So it's the type of, you get started in a micro environment thinking about, oh, I'm just concentrated on the port, or maybe this transfer hub if you're thinking about freight. But now you have data and tools that can kind of assess at a broader scale across your entire state and through your state what the impact of freight movement is. The Greater Nashville Regional Council, they also did some freight movement analysis using trip analytics. They ran some quick analysis. You see origins in the blue, destinations there in the lower right. They're running this analysis to help assess whether or not they could develop, God, I think it was they want to develop a dedicated corridor. And so they're using trip analytics to identify, optimum corridor locations through the state or within the state. Here, their output, they took the output information product from trip analytics and they dumped it into Tableau. Anybody use Tableau here? Anybody? No. Okay, that's a kind of business intelligence tool. And then New Jersey DOT has been using trip analytics. There's a proposed bridge widening project on the Pulaski Skyway. They're trying to assess the impact that bridge widening might have on origin and destination trips. All right, where do we need to message? Are there detours that we can plan for based upon where people are coming from and going to, setting all of that up? What a perfect tool, right? I'm doing a major road widening project. If I know where the travelers are coming from and going to, that helps me kind of prescribe very succinctly what the detours should be. So great use case. All right, we're gonna take a break, stretch, get away. Let's do, get back together at 10:30. That works for everybody? Okay. All right, before we get started, well, actually, this is kind of to get started. Now's the time to go ahead and open up your laptop. And how many of you have already gotten my email with the exercises today? Okay, so everybody's in good shape. The morning crew didn't because it was morning. Now that PDF, it has dynamic and integrated links. So if you printed it out, that's great. You've got a printout that you could kind of follow along with. But the PDF, there's some links to reports that we'll need to use as part of the exercises that we're going to go through. You didn't get the email? Okay. Oh, you don't have connection? What? I would try connecting to the Peachtree guest, PTCCH-guest, and the password is all lowercase Peachtree and then the number 1. Anybody over here maybe help out, maybe email the PDF to them? That would be helpful. All right, so if you've got the PDF document, we're going to get into the exercises in a little bit. Before we jump into the exercises, though, what I wanted to do is kind of walk through some demos, just kind of give you an orientation of trip analytics, kind of at a high level, kind of dive into each of the tools and show you how to maybe get your head around how to craft the input query for each one of these. But before I do that, I know that all of you were contemplating and processing during the break everything that I shared with you already this afternoon. Are there any questions about what I've shared with you thus far? Okay, here's question, quiz time. Is trip analytics and the underlying data a full count of all trips that go through the state of Georgia? Yes or no? No. All right. Are the trips that are within the data set and available to you through trip analytics a statistically significant representative sample of all trips in and through the state? Yes. Okay. Is what you're learning today the end-all, be-all, and there'll be no more releases of trip analytics and nothing to learn after today? No. Version 4.0 is about to be released within this quarter. Okay, last question, helpful for our exercises. What is one of the two input parameters for any query within trip analytics? One of two. Spatial parameter. What is the other? Temporal. Very good. You guys are a great class. Awesome. So two conditions. Trip analytics, though, does provide one more condition, and that's the vehicle type. But the two primaries that you need to be thoughtful about are the spatial and the temporal. All three of the tools do provide you the ability to filter out by vehicle type as well. On that note, I had two people ask me about, Rick, what characterizes light, medium, and heavy vehicles? In the, I brought up in my notepad, I got from INRIC's colleague of mine a number of months ago, those definitions. So that is the weight-based definition for what you see in trip analytics. So light vehicle is 0 to 14,000 pounds. Medium duty is 14,001 to 26,000 pounds. And then a heavy duty is greater than 26,000 pounds. Now, how do we know that? Those weight classes, it's not really explicitly like that. The data sources that INRIX uses, they know what type of vehicle that source is coming from, and then INRIX kind of normalizes and puts those data sources into those three different buckets. Does that make sense? Okay. So that answered your question. That was good. All right, so let's jump into the first thing I wanted to share with you is the landing, how to log in to trips analytics. I always like to just start by going to trips.ritis.org, hitting enter, and takes me to the landing page. Before I go too much further, we're going to explore the interface a little bit. Please do not run any analysis. Don't hit submit. Don't run any analysis. Too many people on this network and pinging our back-end system. Let's kind of preserve the sanctity of the system for other users so that it doesn't get hammered. We're going to walk through some examples, and you're going to learn some of the best practices for using the 3 tools, but please don't submit any queries. It'd be super helpful. All right, so when you log into Trip Analytics, this is what's going to be presented to you. Basically, a list of all states' data sets. You can see that we have quite a few customers that are licensing trajectory data within Trip Analytics. Your state, just as a recap, is right here, Georgia. You can see again, we have backfilled you guys for 2019, 2020, and 2021 for those 3 months. And your license contract began in December of last year, so now you're going to start getting monthly updates with data that you could query for January through December of 2022. This link over here, this is where you're going to get that map of all the O's and D's, the extent of the O's and D's for the data set that we have record of. So it's kind of, I think this is a cool map, right? Like, oh my God, there's trips coming from or going to Wisconsin through the state of Georgia, you know, Iowa, clear out here, West Texas, all the way up into New Hampshire. It's pretty cool. Base geography, road crossings. Those are road crossings across the state. So nice to have just kind of a visual reference of the scope and extent of trips for the product, okay? Other thing to keep in mind in the upper right-hand corner are a couple of helpful links. Helpful, no pun intended, the help system. So the help system, it's fairly basic, gives you some rudimentary guidance and descriptive information on how to craft your analysis, the input queries, and then examining the outputs of those queries. The one that I really like, it's kind of new addition in the last, I think 2 quarters ago. Again, we're releasing updates and technical refreshes to our software pretty regularly. It's the My History. So My History is great in that every report, every analysis that you run, whether it's an OD matrix, a link analysis, or a route analysis, we are storing that report, that project, if you will, in our archive. So you could go back in time and look at it. And also what's cool, you will notice when you get back to your office, not today, and you run some analysis, that it's going to take a while to run a route analysis. It's going to take a while to run a link analysis. You got 100 million trips every day that are, well, in Georgia, it's probably 5 million trips, right, per MAT and INRIX. You've got 5 million trips every day that are part of the database. You multiply that by, I mean, you already have 10 months worth of data, all the different combinations and permutations of time periods and days of the week. It's big data. It's going to take a while to query that. So keep in mind that those sorts of queries are going to take a little while, but when you go back to your history list, the report's already been run and it's cached. So it'll open up a lot quicker. Yes? Yeah, I mean, certain trips just don't get that far. Right. I mean, you can stay up pretty darn late, stop for gas, keep on trucking, and go a long way, which is what's reflected in that map. And it's, I really do need to learn what that condition is, but there's a combination of speed factor and time stopped factor for passenger vehicles that a trip ends. And I know that 10 minutes is part of that factor, but I need to follow up on that. Yes, sir.
That's kind of similar to what I was trying to ask. I see these trips that they meant 1,000 miles. There's no way to stop less than 10 minutes to go 1,000 miles.
Yeah, so for freight movement, NRIX has a kind of a separate set of business logic that's not tied to the passenger vehicle trips that they use to keep a trip going. It's not, it doesn't cover all long haul, but it does cover a good number of long distance movements. Yes?
With the given date of 2020 and 2021, what we have available. With the new data coming up, can we say, when we open the report with the data get recent with the new data, or should we rerun the query again?
No, each query is saved with the parameters that you established when setting up the query, both spatially and temporally. You can edit that query though, and you'll see that in a little bit. So let's go through an example of just what he was saying. Hey, Rick, you know, we're going to be getting more data for January, February, all the way to December 2022. If I ran a report for October of 2021, when October 2022 comes around, will it update it? No, because your query was for October 2021. You can, however, come in and say, oh, you know what? Let me just look at notice what I'm doing here. I can filter my saved queries by different analysis types. But let's say I wanted to look at this particular report. Just go ahead and open it. Should be fairly quick to generate that. Now then, when this is for NHTS, so this is a bad example. Let's do this guy, because we'll get to this in a minute. So this report is part of our exercise. This is the tab to set up the spatial parameters. This is the tab for setting up the time range. Notice that this is just a toggle for each year. Okay, so if a new month and year were to be present, you just uncheck one of the months or one of the years and check the new month or new year, and then hit submit and it reruns, okay? So that's how you would do that. So again, the My History is super useful for being able to go back in time, take a look at any of the analysis that you've done. It's there, it's cached, it's ready for you to use. You can create favorites just by highlighting those favorites so that when you want to just look at favorites, you just click that checkbox in the upper right-hand corner. And you can unfavorite. Now, don't ask me why, but I'm not product designer. You cannot delete reports. We save everything. I don't know why. It seems like it consumes too much disk space. But anyway, we do. We keep all your reports. So for now, you run a report, it's gonna be in your list. And notice how many I have. You know, I'm doing demos all the time, and I do repeats of the same exercise all the time. I got 4 pages. I can't make any sense of this. You know, not only can I not delete reports, but I can't rename them. And so those are all things that are in the to-do list for feature enhancements. So be patient, but submit to our support team some suggestions. We listen to the user community. That's how things get changed. All right, so let us jump into a quick demo of an OD matrix. So again, 3 different tools, 3 different sets of capabilities. When you open up the OD matrix tool, there's a couple of options at the very top. There's a matching axis and custom axis. Custom axes. A custom axis is used when you want to compare OD geographies from different states. Okay, so if you want to, let's say, analyze from Georgia, all the counties in Georgia, to all the counties in Florida, it generates a 159 by 67 matrix. And it runs pretty quickly, okay? OD matrices are pretty quick. Now you can filter this. You go in and say, hey, you know, I just want to look at Tuesday, Wednesday, Wednesday, Thursday. There's some time constraints. You can say, oh, I just want to look at AM peak. So you got this little radial dial for the time of day to define AM peak or whatever time period that you're interested in. Uncheck specific months that you're interested in, not interested in. And then for that to get submitted, just click out of that drop-down list, and it'll regenerate that OD matrix. There's also trip filters. Again, light, medium, heavy. And then all the tools have these options to, from a timing perspective, when you think about a trip, do you want that trip that started and ended in the time range that you define, that temporal component? Do you want the trips that just started in the selected time range or that ended in the selected time range? Then you got some other things like, okay, I don't want to look at percentages, I want to look at total counts. This one's nice for the OD matrix, maximum geographies to display. I just want to look at the top 5 OD pairs. So I just type in 5, click outside that drop down, and boom, there's my top 5 OD pairs. For December of 2021, every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Now I could switch to a zone map. It's going to give me all those OD pairs. The OD zone map, by default, this is going to be, it's going to show you both origins and destinations without labels. You can turn labels on, turn labels off. You can modify the legend to kind of be inclusive of or exclusive of certain values. You can type in specific values if you want. You can hide the lowest values based on your legend. So some really cool interactive methods to kind of manage that output. Now this is really cool, getting into the spider diagram. Now if you want to see, so we see all the oranges in all the origins in orange, all the oranges in orange, all the origins in orange, and the destination geographies are in blue. If you'd like to kind of focus your view or interpretation of just trips that started in Lowndes, how do you pronounce that? Lowndes County. You click, make sure that your show values is turned on, and then click the label for the number of trips. And it's going to show you, it's going to filter everything out and then create the spider diagram to the destination geographies. To turn that off, you click the label again and it goes back. You can do the same for any of the trips, O's and D's. It looks like, that one just had its own. That's weird. Why would that? Oh, you know what? Because I filtered all of these out. I filtered a bunch out, which is why it's not showing up on the map. But anyway, you get the idea. Great way to just kind of explore in a geographic context the results of that matrix. And then up here in the upper right-hand corner, this is your top 10 interzonal OD pairs. and it is dynamic and linked to the map. So as you move your cursor down this OD pair list, you'll see that the map reflects the corresponding OD pairs. Also a cool little feature. Like that? Nice. All right. Question? Go ahead.
We have access to all the data that's in Redis, so it's up and down the ECC.
Well, for trip analytics, you're getting all the data regardless of whether it's up and down the eastern seaboard. It's every trip that's come in or out of the state of Georgia for every month that you've purchased data for. I mean, you saw the map. You're getting stuff out in frickin' Texas, right? And they're not part of the Eastern Transportation Coalition. Neither is Minnesota, Michigan, so none of these are. So you're getting comprehensive data. You're licensed to use Georgia data. Yeah, you're seeing my login. Yeah, because they're part of the coalition. Yeah. Yeah, if you have, more data will be rolled, more states' data will be brought online for you guys in time. Right now, it looks like you've got 3 states, or did you say 4 states? 3? 6, okay. So that might be everything already. All right, let's do a quick look at, sorry, one more. All output reports have an export function. And that's found right there from the matrix table. So when you click that, it allows you to download a CSV file and it emails it to you. So the question was, if I wanted to share the results of my analysis with somebody else, can I do that? Of course, you could share the results and the data with others, but the zone map itself, the zone map, there's no export of the zone map. Yeah, you'd have to take a screen grab. Yeah, you can export the O's and D's, and then to my point earlier, a lot of you are familiar with GIS. It's not that hard to, in time, I don't know when, we're going to have those FIPS codes associated with the geographies, and then you'll be able to join the tables and do all of that you need to. It's kind of a pain right now because when you click export right now, this is the code. You're not going to have a GIS file of counties that has Appling County, with the proper spacing and, no abbreviations and the absolute correct spelling. It just doesn't exist. So it's irritated that that's not been dealt with yet. But this is my point. To join this, create a pivot table of this and to join it with a standardized GIS shapefile in ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Pro, you'd have to hand jam a whole bunch of stuff. So it's not really that easy. Yes, ma'am.
I see most of this is from county. Can you get down to a micro situation, like for instance, if you wanted to know you know, where people were coming from to a stadium or something.
Oh, that's the use case in our exercise.
Oh, okay. So you can get down to a street level?
So currently, in the current release, the route analysis tool allows you to look at origin and destination trends in terms of routes that were used as low a level of geography, smallest level of geography, standardized geography is zip code. Or you define your own geography. And that can be, you know, a block if you want it to be, but you've got to set up an origin and a destination. In the next release, you can draw little gates over roads or define boxes around areas that you want to analyze or upload teeny tiny blocks as GeoJSON files and run your analysis. There'll be a boatload of options in the next release. Today, you have 4 standardized geographies, counties, sub-counties, which are cities, TAZs, transportation analysis zones, and zip codes, and your own GeoJSON custom geography, okay? But a good question nonetheless. All right, where were we? We're about ready to do a segment analysis. All right, let's go ahead and just kind of walk through segment analysis, some of the parameters that go into that. There's 3 tabs. The map controls, that's the spatial. The trip filters, of course, just the vehicle type. And then the temporal parameters, all pretty much the same thing on all the tools. For map controls, let's say we wanted to do that analysis. In our exercise, we're going to do analysis on that northbound corridor of I-75, I-85 through the center of Metro Atlanta. So to query that segment and find it, just type in I-75 or whatever the road name is that you're interested in, and it's going to go through and look for all of the candidate road segments that meet that criteria. There's lots and lots of options, but the one that I'm interested in is this one right here, the northbound and southbound. But notice I can kind of parse this out more if I wanted to. Maybe I wanted to just look at southbound as opposed to northbound. If you want to kind of shrink the segment, you could come in here and say partial, and you can say, oh no, I only want it from Martin Luther King to there. So there's some fidelity in kind of spatially refining that corridor that you want to do your link segment analysis with. Now here's the deal. You're going to find this to be clunky. That whole search by road feature to set your spatial parameter in the link segment analysis, I agree, kind of clunky. The next release is going to make it a lot easier for you to kind of select the roads that you're interested in and then set up your query. But in the meantime, these tools are, the query and finding of roads is designed to be as optimized from a performance perspective as possible given the architecture of the system. So it's really laid out for performance maximization more than anything else. So thank you for understanding. All right, so once you've set up your spatial, temporal parameters, again, this is pretty basic stuff, determining time of day, day of the week, month, and year. You hit run, and boom, there's your results. So that's the segment, that little green segment. That's our northbound segment at I-75, I-85. And all of the orange polygons are the origin counties that started and passed through that corridor. And the blue represents all of the destination geographies. Yes, Taylor? That is, I'm not sure why it's gray, but when you you single click it, it's got data. You could, no, that's all right. I mean, there's a lot of stuff I don't know. So, right. So I'm not really sure why. That's probably what it is. Notice I love this hide lowest color range because it just takes a lot of noise out if you really want to focus or concentrate your kind of visual analysis on the primary roads or primary counties. Notice as I change the legend, it kind of grows that extent. Again, because this is map-based, we can look at those spider diagrams, which is kind of cool. Because we turned on the show values on map, I could click on, oh wow, all the O's and D's are in the same. What are the odds of that? Huh. Interesting. Yeah. And this is just, I love these spider diagrams. They're really cool. And, you know, to get back to your question earlier, it would be nice if we had the ability to export, you know, that in such a way that you can replicate it in a GIS, but it's not there right now. Provide the feedback and we'll do it. That's key. Notice down below, again, you can modify, once you've run a report, you can modify any of the parameters, temporally, spatially, trip filters, and resubmit. If you change one element, watch what happens. Oh, I don't want to look at heavyweight trucks. I just want to look at light and medium. The submit button becomes active and you have to resubmit. You can view the matrix for all of these, and that is where you're going to export the results of your link analysis right there, okay? All right, lastly, let's just do a quick overview of the route analysis. So the route analysis tool, largely set up out of the box to just handle those standardized geographies. You know, to your question earlier, it's just those counties, sub-counties, TASs, and zip codes, figuring out routes that were used between those standardized geographies and other standardized geographies. Again, you can upload your own GeoJSON file. You click that button there, you go out, you say choose file, look for your GeoJSON file, and it walks you through using that custom geography. Yes? Nope.
Okay, so we can do like this zip code, this tab, and like.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so right now, and then we'll see that in the exercise, I'll just give you a preview of what that might look like. So here, in this analysis, this is for a bridge strike that took place on December 3rd up in the northern part of the state. I came in and I said, okay, the bridge strike took place within this zip code, which is my origin right here. This is a zip code. Bridge strike took place right around here. And then I just kind of guesstimated. I said, okay, because they had to close down I-75 southbound, what were the likely destination counties that those trips would have been going to? And so I went out and I selected, I don't know, 5 or 6 different counties. And then I ran the analysis for every Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of December 2021, because the bridge strike, some freight truck or dumpster truck or something hit a bridge. I think it was on a Thursday. Anyway, the exercise is focused on, well, what happened to the pattern and movement of trips as a result of that southbound lane closure? It's kind of interesting what was discovered. And I'm not a traffic ops or planner guy, but this tool gave me some insights that, you know, others may not know, which is, hey, there was a new route that was used because of the closure. So anyway, to answer your question, yes, you can use multiple geographies and also upload custom geographies. But we try to make it easy for you by providing, you know, the counties for your, you know, you can even go cross state. Like, oh, I want to figure out, here, let's do that. So within Georgia, I want to go from Appling County to my destination. Maybe I want it to be North Carolina, and I'm at, so like, be totally random, right? Why you'd want to analyze origin and destination routes between those two counties, I don't know. It's just to illustrate that you have flexibility in performing that analysis. And that could be, again, any combination of those standardized geographies as well. Trip filters is the same with the route analysis tool, and the time period exploration element is essentially the same. I don't know why, but we changed the time of day filtering from that little radial, like looks like a clock, to this. So you can still define the time of day, but it's on a timeline instead of a radial filter. All right, so the results. Let's explore some results for a route analysis. This is, again, that bridge strike that took place. I'm going to turn off the labels so that you can see what the results were. At the top of the output report for a route analysis is a list of every route that was taken between the designated zip code 30103 to the 5 counties that I defined, started and ended in December 2021 every Wednesday. So this is an analysis against all Wednesdays between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. for all vehicle types. So look at this. It's like, it's silly amount of records. Every single route is in here that was used. There's only 184 because of pretty refined temporal conditions, but still, even for 6 to 10 on Wednesdays in December 21, there are 184 different routes that vehicles took. And you could see the metrics here. See, these are some of the performance measures. You've got the number of trips, the number of light vehicles, medium vehicles, and heavy vehicles separated out. You have the length of the corridor, the travel time, average, min travel time, max travel time, and the overall reliability. Now, if you zoom in a little bit, you'll see some of the fidelity to all of those trips. The blue happens to be the highlighted record in my table. So notice at the top, I could click on each of the routes that were returned. By default, they're ranked by the number of trips. And you can look at them. You just go in and explore that while the 56 trips that took that route, they largely started in the same way that these guys did, but then they peeled away and went down a different route. While these guys up here ended up going to the east along 285. And then these guys went to the west along 285, along the Beltway. So it's kind of cool. And then there's this screen line tool right here. That little guy, if you click that, it's waiting for you to digitize on screen a line to help you pull out what the trip counts were that intersect each of those roads. You double click it, it ends. So now if you go back to the header on that map frame and click screen line summary, it gives you a breakdown that, oh, for those specific roads, 109 trips went across perimeter I-285, and then another 72 went across, you know, that segment. I mean, crazy, right? Really, really cool stuff. You could copy these coordinates so that, you know, maybe you wanted to analyze, the results at a different time period. It's pretty easy to Control Z. It's pretty easy to analyze temporal variations because you could come back in, hit the screen line tool, just kind of digitize something out in space and say, oh, well, I want to use the coordinate screen line that I had earlier, say replace. So you could, you know, use that screen line over and over again to compare and contrast different time periods and the number of trips and some of those other performance measures that are in there. So that is an example of some output analysis from the route analysis tool. Yes, sir. Well, for the route analysis, you saw that it will show you every single trip, even if there was only one trip between those two geographies that you define. Today, if you upload a GeoJSON file that's a block, then that's what it's going to use. But keep in mind, that's not going to be very useful. You got to include the roads, right? Because it needs to include the segments of roads that you want it to know that it started from, and that destination geography to include any roads that you're interested in terms of the destination. Mm-hmm. Leaving that facility? Absolutely. So you, within your GIS software, you just create a polygon that includes, so, you know, with the facility is within a block, but you create your polygon outside the roads that comprise that block. Does that make sense? Yeah, so just make sure that your polygon that you want to figure out what the origin is, you include those roads.
A couple questions. So for this one, the January 22 data, do we know when we'll have access to it? Will it be like February 1st?
It's usually, the first or second of the month.
And then do we know when we'll be able to get more of the granularity for the data just from the month? So if we could have like by day or by hour?
Well, you already have by hour. By day, I don't know the answer to that. That's a question for support at ridis.org.
Another question with the OT matrix, would this be a good way to estimate volume data to see how many vehicles are traveling maybe in and out of a county?
So remember, that trip analytics and the trips that comprise the data within trip analytics is a sample count, okay? You can use it to validate some of your modeling software and to make some estimates of volume, because it is trips, right? And they're real trips. It's not modeled, it's not fantasized, it's real, probe trajectory data that comprises those estimates. Not all arterials, but pretty much most important roads. I mean, like rural areas, it's going to be tough to capture all the rural roads. Think of it as, if you're familiar with the National Highway System, the NHS, it's pretty comprehensive, but it doesn't cover, the National Highway System doesn't cover every single road. It's the interstates, it's the US routes, and state routes, and then there's a broader set of road segments that are included, like within this other package, NPM RDS Analytics, that gives you broader coverage, but it's definitely not every road. That's what Rhode Island did. They took the output and they generated their own heat map. Yeah, the next release has those tools in it. Yeah, that last question. Hey, Rick, I use Probe Data Analytics. Probe Data Analytics has this function to be able to create your own polygons or to identify the roads that you want to analyze. There's no notion of working with polygons in PDA. Everything's working with roads. That being said, the same sort of spatial selection and identification tools that are in Probe Data Analytics will sort of be implemented in the next release of Trip Analytics. Yeah. Yes, sir.
So the current one is like origin to destination. If you are doing that one, because you want to see how the money trips are going from that area. Is there a way we can reverse it? You want to make the current destination origin and current origin destination, but you keep it like,
there's not a toggle for that. You'd have to recraft the query. Yeah. All right, at this juncture, it's time to jump into, how much time do we have left? We've got 1 more hour? Okay, perfect. So it is time now to jump into our exercise. So if all of you have the exercise, we've got 4 exercises. Unfortunately, I'm sure you're really sad. You're not going to be able to do number 1? Is number 1 the one that uses it? Yeah, you're not going to be able to do number 1. You're only going to be able to do 2, 3, and 4 because, I didn't know that you didn't have access to the National Household Travel Survey data. So that's my bad. But what I will do is I'll show you the results. Let's just talk through it really quickly. So the idea is that we want to take advantage of some of the discretionary money at the state level that's coming out of the new bipartisan infrastructure investment jobs act, BIJA, right? So it's a recently passed bill signed by the president. Lots and lots of money for infrastructure, but there's lots of money really going towards rail. So the idea is conceptually, okay, well, where is rail traffic, or where is rail travel going from and to out of the state of Georgia? If we're looking at southern patterns, this scenario was, all right, we'll start in the state of Georgia, we'll look at destinations in the state of Florida, And let's find out, what those patterns of rail travel are relative to the National Household Travel Survey. And the findings were pretty straightforward and not a huge surprise, but I'll just go ahead and open it up for you so that we could take a look at it together. This is your So this is the output of the query. A lot of origins and destinations don't have any data, so I'm just going to kind of change my matrix to be a 5 by 5. All right, so now I'm just looking at the top 5 origins and destinations in terms of trips. I'm also going to change this from percentages to total counts. And also, for the NHTS data, I'm going to get rid of air, vehicle, and other, and just focus on rail, because that's the use case. What's the rail travel look like from that 2020 survey estimate between Georgia and Florida? I personally would have thought that predominant trips would have been out of Georgia to the Orlando area. Because it's amusement park central. But if you look at the data, it's not. It's only the second most. Like the number 1 rail destination was Miami. I mean, by a large number, 16,900 trips as compared to, generally 5,000 or so, maybe 6,000 to Orlando. So just gaining those insights might kind of reorient the way you think about, all right, if we want to focus on reliability for passenger rail service from the Atlanta region to the Miami region or to Florida, where should we focus on reliability? On-time arrivals. Is it to Orlando? No, most people are going to Miami. So that's where we should focus our attention from, with regard to maybe going after grants, okay? You've got data-driven evidence that shows there's a lot of people that travel from Georgia to Miami. Now, let's pursue that grant. And it's totally hypothetical. I know it's, maybe not a completely accurate sort of use case, but it at least illustrates some ideas for how you might leverage the NHTS data, which I'm hoping you actually do get access to eventually. Apparently, this was a project that we did for inside of Maryland, but it's a national data set, so I'm not really sure why you guys wouldn't have access to it. I need to work on that. But anyway, so one of the questions, in and amongst the questions for that first one, I said, all right, well, based on the top rank, so we've already determined where we should focus our attention from a reliability perspective. That's a Miami route. How many trips were taken to Florida from what was it? It was the second highest ranked origin. Oh, it was Savannah. So the second highest ranked origin was Savannah. And to determine how many trips went from Savannah to Miami, you just go back to the matrix and you can answer the question. This matrix is pretty useful. It does give you total counts, even though you filtered it down by 5 by 5 grid. And, OD pairs. You go back to the zone map. Remember this little function in the upper right-hand corner? What was the third ranked OD pair in this analysis? You just go all the way down to number 3. And I'll tell you, third ranked is Savannah to Orlando. That's not too surprising, right? I really thought that this would have been, even Atlanta would have been to Orlando. Wouldn't you think? Yeah. It's just the availability of rail. Yeah. Oh, so you got to go to Savannah and then south?
Yeah, we don't have Atlanta rails like the 1970s.
Oh my Lord.
That used to exist. It used to be like multiple times a day after rail. We decided to have a pilot. 22 miles from Disney World to nearest Amtrak stop. It's pretty unbelievable.
Yeah, they need a connector. All right, so that was exercise 1. I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to kind of pause and work through exercise 2. This is the link analysis example. I've already demoed it, so you can walk through it or not. Notice that this is a link to the report. So all you have to do is click that hyperlink. It's going to open up the report that's already been cached, and you can answer we can answer the questions together in a minute or in a few minutes. There's another question in the back. I need water. Did you have another question? It's just passenger for NHTS. Yeah. Does anybody happen to have NHTS exposed in trip analytics to them? So just like any other data set, it'd just be a big green box.
Okay. Yeah, I don't see it.
Yeah. So again, do not submit a query. If you think you have credentials, send an email to support@ritis.org. If you do not have credentials, then you are going to navigate to ritis.org and sometimes it takes 5 minutes.
Well, I got an email that I have is that, I did register for it, and I got an email, and then when I click on it, it gives me this Reddit, but it doesn't give me the data analysis, transportation system staff.
Yep. All right. Two, if you have a login, okay, first let me go back to this gentleman. If you do not have a login, or if you don't have credentials for Ritis or Trip Analytics, go to ritis.org and click that link, request an account. Fill out your information, make sure you use the organization name that's tied to GDOT and your domain email address, or your email address that's got a domain to the associated with the company that's supporting GDOT. And they should send you an authorization with credentials in no time. GDOT already has a list of contractors that should be part of the data use agreement. If you're not, if you don't have credentials and you don't get approval, send Matt Glasser an email, and you might have to fill out a data use agreement, and it's a one-pager, super simple to complete. It's not that big of a deal. Organization, yep. And then this young lady said, hey, Rick, I got my credentials, I've logged in, and when I log in, it takes me here. What the hell is this? Well, that's RIDIS, okay? And buried within RIDIS, there's two ways to get to Trip Analytics. You can navigate directly to Trip Analytics by going to trips.ridis.org, which is the preferred way. Or if you come in through RIDIS, go to the Data Archive tab, and then you're going to see Trip Analytics at the far right on the header. And you click that, and it opens up Trip Analytics. So Data Archive, it's under Data Archive tab, and then it's the far rightmost option, Trip Analytics, on the header. Or just navigate to trips.ridis.org. All right, let's walk through the questions for that first exercise. So, the scenario was largely around doing a road winding project along that I-75-85 corridor and understanding what the impact, kind of the scope and impact of the project would be from an origin and destination perspective. So again, it's hypothetical because I'm not a planner or an operations guy that works on road winding projects, but it's just to illustrate that if you want to get a sense for the type of travel movement that's going through one direction of one small segment of road, you can do that. And it's totally impressive capability that once you define that segment that you want to look at, was this the output I was looking at? Yeah. Once you define that segment, then it's going to give you all sorts of insights about where people are coming from in orange and where they're going to in blue. So we see that we turn off the show values on map. That northernmost city that people are driving through that corridor northbound to get to is what? Indianapolis. And the southernmost is somewhere around Miami from an origin perspective. And that makes sense, right? People are going to, if you're going northbound through that segment, you're going to be coming from the south, going north. Now then, what was one of the other questions in there? It was something to do with a specific county, right? Figuring out how many trips originated out of that county and ended up in that county? Clayton County. So let's zoom in. Now where was Clayton? That's Clayton County. So there's your number. 30,774 origin trips, and for whatever reason, they left that 74 or 743, went through that segment of roadway northbound and then ended up back there. Which I guess is conceivable, but yeah, then it would definitely change. You know, the point is that, you know, if you don't look at the entire day, you know, it's obviously the results are going to be very different, which is absolutely true. And then if we wanted to look at, remember those spider diagrams? We wanted to just look at the, was it the same county? And the question, okay, Fulton, and finally Clayton County show value, okay. So with the Clayton County results, you just click on the label. Remember, if you click on the label, it gives you the spider diagram to all the destination geographies and their counts. Click on the label again, and it goes back. Cool, huh? So she was saying that, you know, those gray counties that we saw in one of the previous maps, zone maps, the origin and destination counts the same, and it could be an anomaly, which kind of makes sense. All right, let's move on to the next exercise. Yes, sir. You don't with segment analysis. You can by changing the time, right? Think about it. I looked at the entire day. Like if you shrink, I looked at 24 hours. If you shrink the time, you're not going to get that far within a couple hours if that's the time window that you're looking at. Yeah, all of the OD matrices can be exported, and that you should see that. You switch back to the OD matrix, that's right there. The Save As button. Okay? Any other questions before we jump into exercise 3? All right, we got about 40 minutes or so. This one's, this is the bridge strike example. So we had that bridge strike back in December. If I needed to, you know, per the setup of the scenario, if I wanted to figure out any anomalies that existed on Thursdays within December, which is when the bridge strike took place, is on a Thursday. If I wanted to pull out any anomalies, what would I do? I'd analyze Thursdays relative to Wednesdays, or analyze it relative to Fridays or Tuesdays. So I just ran 3 different reports that looked at, for December, all Thursdays between 6 and 10 p.m., 6 a.m. and 10 p.m., because that's the bulk of the day. And I compared that to all Wednesdays and all Fridays in the same time period, basically. Now then, the results were kind of interesting. And I'll, you know, go ahead and explore these reports. Go ahead and open them up and see if you can pull out anything interesting between the Thursday report and the other Wednesday and Friday reports. The hint is, look at the origin zip code area and the routes around it. So I'll let you noodle on that for just a little bit. Well, I already kind of gave you the answer in the exercise. So this screen grab, this is for Thursday. For Thursdays in December 2021. If you look at this part of Georgia for the Wednesday and Friday report, you'll see something here that you don't see in the Wednesday and Friday report. Which is an awesome testament to the value of the insights that these tools and data brings. Because I'm not an ops guy, I'm not a planner, but I discovered something just by running some analysis. All right, so let's take a look at this together. All right, folks, if I could have your attention here. So this is Wednesdays from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. in December. This is the Fridays. Kind of looks the same, right? In terms of, top ranked routes and trips, not too dissimilar. Oop. All right, now when I switch to the Thursdays analysis, what pops up? That route right down the middle of the other two. The Johnson Lake Road Southeast. It's not significant. We captured 12 trips, but this route was not in any of the Fridays or any of the Wednesday analysis. Meaning, when that bridge strike took place, vehicles, mostly passenger vehicles, figured out to carry on their route in a southerly direction using yet a third possible option rather than the two primaries, which are, I guess, Johnson Lake Road Southeast and or number 7 and that guy. So what this tells me from an operations perspective is, number one, people did figure out another route to go south to those counties. This might inform me from an after action perspective, it might inform me of where I want mobile dynamic message signs, thinking about future planning for detours in the event of other events similar to this. How can I manage emergency responses for big road closures? People are going to find a way to move through these closures, and we need to be better prepared. And here we're showing that, based on the analysis, there's a third primary route that was taken, and that was, while not big in numbers, it was still significant relative to the overall trip counts for Thursdays in December. So I thought that was kind of cool. Macedonia Road. There, back up here, it's Hall Station Road. What's that? Yeah, there's only, well, for that one, there's number 10. Where are we? Highlight that. Yeah, there's only, what was captured in the trips? Yeah, that's total, that's all trips between the two, between the origin and the destination geographies. Yeah, light is the passenger. Passenger, vans, anything under, what was it, 14,000 pounds? Yeah, anything under 14,000 pounds. All right, with the time remaining, let's walk through this last one together, because I know it's the end of the day, everybody wants to go home. I'm not disillusioned. So the last scenario is kind of a fun one because it talks about some exciting things that happened here in Atlanta. Your Atlanta Braves won the World Series. Woohoo! It was a 7-game battle. Game 3 was actually held at home in Truist Park. And naturally, when you've got a big game like that on a weekday, it's going to have, I mean, as a planner or even a traffic operations person, you know it's going to have an impact on the system, right? Well, what was that impact is what the executives within Georgia DOT asked. This is basically an after-action event assessment. And what I've set up for you here is a way for you to generate, or I've asked you to generate this one-page executive summary report that rolls up some analysis out of 3 different reports that was run with Trip Analytics to help populate and insert key metrics. This is something you give to an executive or to senior leadership, or you share with the media or legislators, whatever. You know, Trip Analytics, Probe Data Analytics, great tools for asking performance measure or origin destination questions, yet we always are asked to provide a summary report or, you know, can you write this up so that I could share this with my executive? And what the CATT Lab has done is prepared a whole boatload of template reports for our user community that are free to download. And you notice this link here? If you click that link, it takes you to our templates page. And inside this templates page, you'll notice that there's 3 categories of reports that we've prepared for our user community: corridor performance reports, monthly congestion, and project assessment reports. If you click any one of these, you'll see that there are any number of PowerPoint templates that are designed for you to download, and then you run your analysis in Probe Data Analytics, or in this case, Trip Analytics, to feed this particular report. You download these PowerPoints, and then you pull out from our analytics tools the metrics that you need to just dump into these report templates. It's nice and clean. It's easy to consume. You know, executive leadership needs sound bites, right? You need to tell the story in an easy way. These template reports are a way to do that. So this last question, we answered some key, we developed some key metrics. We derived key metrics to help populate this form. Those key metrics were, what were the top 3 corridors that were used? What was the trip increase? What was the trip count increase? What was the most significant increase of all trips or all routes that were used to get into Truist Park? What was the overall travel time increase for the top 10 corridors? And then what was the % increase in trips overall into Truist Park during Game 3 that was held at home? How do we get these details? you run a report for the days of the month that the World Series was held on, which was October 29th, I believe was a Friday. So you run Friday analysis for October, and then I ran Wednesday and Thursday analysis for October. And I just compared the numbers, did some basic math, and I came up with this. So it's not that difficult. Let's look at the reports. So this is Friday, the day of the game. I set up my origin geographies to be those 2 zip codes that basically comprise Truist Park and some parking lots that are likely close to the park. So that I established that as my origin geography. Many of you have asked, well, can I make it smaller? Can I be very specific? Hell yeah, you could go out and figure out, make your own polygon and upload it as a GeoJSON file and run the analysis that way. In version 4.0, this would be even easier because you just draw on the map and go, and boom, Bob's your uncle. But I wanted to make it easy for me and not jump through a bunch of hoops. So I just said, okay, these 2 zip codes comprise Truist Park and parking lots near Truist Park. And then I said, okay, well, I want to create a buffer area of origin geographies that surround the ballpark. So I just went out and I selected a bunch of counties to make that buffer and ring around it. I didn't include the inner rings because I don't know, I just thought it was cool to look at it that way. So I just made that ring around Truist Park and then ran the analysis for Fridays from 12 p.m. to 11 p.m. So I narrowed my time range, right? Because the game's at night. It's going to be broadcast on live TV. I think they were all at like 7 or 8 Eastern, right? To accommodate for West Coast. So I knew that people could have started coming into Truist Park at noon because they wanted to tailgate or go have food, then get to the stadium, blah, blah, blah. So I just said, you know what, from noon to, you know, whatever, 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. And then I only looked at light passenger. And then I ran the same analysis, turn the labels off. I ran the same analysis for Thursday. And then again, same analysis for Wednesday. Now then the numbers, why is this? This is going off the screen. All the metrics, for whatever reason, are off the map here. So the metrics that I use to derive and populate that executive report largely came from comparing and contrasting again. Now I can see my table here. Comparing and contrasting number of trips for the top 3 corridors that were used relative to Friday's numbers. So for example, for Friday, the top corridor that was used is going to be I-75. There's 1,524 trips for the day of the game, as compared to 900 trips on an average Wednesday. And I think the number was generally the same for Thursdays. It was like 800 or 900. So that's what contributed to a 75% increase. I just did basic math. I just said, okay, I had this many trips, and this is legitimate, right? A percent increase. It doesn't matter if it's a sample size, right? We're not given volume counts. We're not given exact numbers. We're just saying there's a % increase in trips, and a % increase in volume. There's going to be a % increase in travel time. That's all this is. And that's directly discernible through basic math from those output products, or those output reports. So this is kind of a cool way, another way to kind of take the output from trip analytics or probe data analytics and then configure it, run some basic math, and help tell a story. And that's what we have to do sometimes, is we have to tell a story to help message and effectively communicate to the public, our senior leadership, what's happening across the network. So with that, I'm going to wrap up. I'm going to just say a couple of things. I intend to share with Matt summary documents. So you guys will get a copy of the slide deck. You'll get copies of these reports, a copy of this report, and a copy of the PowerPoint that I used to generate this report. Because all this is look, I'll show it to you right now. It's still open. Why is it not opening? Where is it? Huh. Whatever. It won't open. Anyway, I'll share with you the PowerPoint document that you can then configure. What else do I need to say? You already have the exercises. Anyway, I'll send a bunch of summary info. What I did want to kind of wrap up with also is that you are not alone, and that it's really important for us that you guys are successful in the work that you do for Georgia DOT. My laptop's all locked up. Perfect timing. But my email address is rayers@umd.edu, rayers@umd.edu. I am happy to answer questions. If you want a demo of this stuff, again, one-on-one, I'm a busy dude, but I'm happy to spend 30 minutes with you one day to kind of, again, want you to be successful. So feel free to reach out to me via email, and I'll help out. Yes, sir, you had a question. Absolutely. Send them to me, but also provide feedback to support@ridis.org. We constantly get feedback from the user community. We love to hear from you.
That's just like, oh, it'd be cool if they could do this.
Right.
Send it in and say, y'all should do this.
And we put it in the queue. And yeah, what you might be thinking of may already be in the feature function enhancement list. So, any other questions, comments? Thank you all very much.